morning. My name is John Stryker Meyer, aka Tilt. Joined the Army in December 1966, and then after basic training, went through Special Forces training. Had 2 tours of duty in Vietnam with Special Forces, and we were assigned to MACV-SOG, which was the 8-year secret war. I was involved in that for a total of 19 months during 2 tours of duty, and my time in service ended April 25th, 1970.
Second one, Greg, come on. Here, you do this. Yeah, my nickname was Tilt. I had another call sign, but everybody just used my nickname, which was Tilt, the 4-letter word.
Sorry?
Pinballs. Ever play pinballs?
Yes.
So when you play a pinball machine and you lose, you walk away unhappy. When I lose, I shake the snail snot out of it. I get to see my name in neon, and then I walk away. That was May 1968, and that would have been at the end of 17 months of training, or 18 months, going through basic AIT, Special Forces, and we had some TDY training before we went to Vietnam. So by the time we had read the book, The Green Berets, we knew that that was the best special operations unit at the time, probably today too. And it's one thing to talk about being in special operations behind enemy lines and those kind of things, but that moment in time, it hit home. It's like, welcome to the secret war, and everything changed. This is the part you never hear about in training group, but now this is, 1968, it was our worst year of the war in terms of casualties. We had our highest casualty rate. We didn't know it at the time, but we had the highest casualty rate of the war at that time for SOG, which was our secret war. And so yeah, we signed the dotted line, and then from there on, shortly thereafter we signed it, at the end of that day, we had learned about a Sergeant First Class Paul Villarosa, who was killed in action in January of 1968. Paul had been our trainer, and when we were going through combo training at Fort Bragg, myself, Johnny McIntyre, and a few others, we got recycled because we had 10 years. We had a hard time learning Morse code. Well, Paul worked with us on the weekends, at nights. He'd bring us back, finally got us up to speed so we could become Green Berets. And our MOS, the military occupational status, was as a communicator. We had to learn Morse code. He was our legend. He had a tattoo on his neck that said, "Cut here." And he had 3 tours of duty in Vietnam previous. He had gone back to the 4th tour, got into SOG, and he was one of the first missions out of FOB-4 in Da Nang. He was killed in action. And we heard some of the gory details, which I won't go into here, but he was killed. So this is one of our legends who trained us. We signed a document, we hear about Paul, it's like, this war is deadly serious. And it's just like, you conveyed the sense of some of the movies from World War II, the OSS movies, of people going behind enemy lines, making little mistakes and dying, and people doing a job. So our job was, we're the tip of the spear today, we got to get out there and see how it's done. And so that was our entrance to the secret war. And then further, when we, after we get assigned to FOB-1, Phu-Bai. And when we land on the helicopter at Phu-Bai, which was a kind of a historic flight on the way up, we were flown by South Vietnamese Air Force, and the code name was King Bees for our South Vietnamese Air Force pilots. And nobody ever told us. All through our training, everything was Hueys, Chinooks. They had some experimental helicopters they had us work with, just as entering them without getting your head cut off and those kind of things. And we go out to the runway to go up to FOB-1. Here's an old H-34 Sikorsky, a 9-cylinder helicopter that has a B-17 engine in it, as this engine that drives it. And when you first start those engines up, they cough and they sputter. And we were like going, WTF? Where's my Huey? And that was another subtle introduction to the secret war. But once they got rolling, they flew us up, and we're going down Highway 1, and all of a sudden, the helicopter turns, and we're sitting there. One minute you're looking out at the scenery, looking to the east. The next second you're looking at Highway 1 on a 90-degree turn as they go over FOB 1. So that was our welcome to the Secret War. Then we got off, and George and I disagree about this a little bit, but my memory goes that there was a recon team that got on the helicopter and left for a mission. It was Spike Team Idaho, and they never returned. They were listed as missing in action. A couple days later, Spike Team Oregon went in to try to find a team, to find any survivors. They got shot up really bad. Everybody was wounded in action. They had one KIA killed in action. So that was our entrance to the Secret War. So in my case, there's an opening, instant. A team gets wiped out, you're going to replace it. Fortunately, Spider Parks became the team leader. Don Wolcombe was the assistant. And I was the greenest of the Green Berets at this point because Spider had run several missions. Don had a couple of missions under his belt. And fortunately, we had outstanding South Vietnamese that were on the team. And so Spider then trained us up to get ready to run missions off of that. So that was our introduction to the Secret War.
Is there ever a time?
No. Read the book and said if I go to Vietnam, I want to go with the Green Berets. They had the extra training. I was a city slicker from Trenton, New Jersey. If anybody needs training, it's me. And so I was glad to get it. I needed it. And then we got in country with Spider and the South Vietnamese on our team. We trained up, we lost 3 or 4 South Vietnamese. We had to hire new South Vietnamese. So myself and the new guys got trained in all the SOPs, all the rapid fire drills, contingency drills and plans, things like that. And we just ran through it time and time again. So no, that was our job. We were Special Forces, and here's the mission. I planned on doing my year, and as it turned out, I did 1 year tour duty, and then went home, and then went back to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, where I was assigned to 10th Special Forces Group, and hated every second of my time there. And I felt guilty about leaving. And we had some issues with law enforcement. There had been a couple bar fights and things, and the MPs were kind of looking for us. So I went down to the Pentagon, got my orders cut to go back, and got back on my old recon team in October 1969. No, we got a lot of mail. You just couldn't say a thing about it. So I got letters from my grandmom Stryker. Mom and Dad always had letters. My brother and sister sent letters. So I tell about the weather and little things about some of the people I worked with, but we could never say anything. And many years after my first book came out, Across the Fence, my dad came up to me and said, I read your book. I said, now I know why they came by and collected our trash. There was an African-American gentleman who would come by. He was like 6'5", and our trash was picked up on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And there'd be days he would come out and take our trash. I never could figure out why. Well, Dad got a job at the post office where the FBI is located. So I saw that guy, and he came out of the FBI office there. So they were taking our trash because you were in the Secret War, and they were checking to see if we were saying anything we shouldn't say. So that's how serious they were about the Secret War. But we had the Secret War because our government had entered some kind of a treaty or an understanding in Southeast Asia where we'd have no combat troops in Laos, Cambodia, and the communists signed the agreement or had agreed to it in some form. Of course, they're communists, they're all lying, and by the time that I arrived in '68, there were 25,000 to 30,000 NVA, North Vietnamese Army soldiers in Laos, and anywhere from 50 to 100,000 in Cambodia. They would come across the border, attack our bases, attack our allies, and then go back and lick their wounds, and our conventional units couldn't go after them. So the question was, what were they doing? So from 1964 until '72, we had the Secret War, where we flew in by helicopter for the first 6 years, and then occasionally had some parachute jumps in later in the war. And during the time that I was there, it was just strictly helicopters. The South Vietnamese Air Force inserted us, pulled us out, and then we also worked with the 101st Airborne, 1st Cav. And during that time, they told us that we would go in sterile. So be no identification, no personal photographs, no letters, no nothing, so that if we were killed or captured, our government would have plausible deniability to say, we don't know who this guy is. And because we weren't supposed to be there. And our State Department had rigorous standards on that. And so that's why we signed the non-disclosure agreement. We had, in the Secret War, we had the recon teams that would go in and see what the enemy was doing. You have a point reconnaissance, area reconnaissance, a wiretap, POW snatch, bomb damage assessment. So if they came in with an arc like with B-52 bomb strike, the Air Force would want to know what had happened on the ground. So that was one of our assignments, to go in and to do that. The enemy, by the end of 68, 69, they were beginning to run fuel lines down to have the trucks that would come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So supplies that come from North Vietnam down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and then they have different parts of the trail that come into South Vietnam, I Corps, 2 Corps, 3 Corps, and then Cambodia. And they also had things that came from Sihanoukville. So our job was to see what they were up to go in with a recon team. They also had hatchet forces that were a quick reaction force that could be anywhere from a platoon to a company size operations that would go in. Sometimes they'd do slam operations where they'd go in and block the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The Air Force would bomb the trucks as they backed up just to try to interdict some of their supplies that were heading south. And again, our orders came from the White House through our headquarters in Saigon, and all of our after action reports were signed, sent back to Saigon, then right back to the White House. They had an officer there that collected those and reported to the higher authorities there at the time. I had a South Vietnamese team, and so on my team I had at least 3 men. In 1954, after Dien Bien Phu fell, the Vietnamese defeated the French, kicked them out of the country. There was an 18-month period of time where anybody in the north could go south, anybody in the south could go north. Well, thousands of Vietnamese fled to the south. No one that I know of went north. And why? They would prefer to live with a corrupt government in South Vietnam than to be with the communists, be under the thumb of communism in North Vietnam. And on my team, I had 3 members, and all the South Vietnamese, we had a counterpart who was Nguyen Van Sao. He was our team leader, and he had been fighting in the war for 3 years, the secret war at that time. Nguyen Cong Hep was our interpreter, who spoke 4 languages. He corrected my English, and he was a smartass on top of it. So these were the 2 key members of the team that we rebuilt Spike Team Idaho on. And then we had other members of the team. Phuc, who was a young point man, he came from the north. Tuan came from the north. And later we had Do Thi Quang, who came to our team. And they had all come south with their families when they were young. They knew communism, they hated it, and they were willing to die for combating it. I'm alive today thanks to them, to the King Bee pilots. Without their valor, I would have been fertilizer in Laos a long time ago. The South Vietnamese we had were not part of the ARVN.
Okay.
That's the regular Vietnamese army. Our men were more or less mercenaries. We paid them more than the ARVN, and like in our case, they had more experience and they had been vetted. And then by the time we rebuilt the team, Spider, who was the team leader, worked with Sal and Hep to vet the new members that came on. We hired 3 15-year-olds that came on the team, and over time they became excellent team members. And fortunately, we never had to worry about friendly fire from within. We trusted them implicitly. We had our checks. We had the way to check to see in the early days, even with Hep, our interpreter, we wanted to make sure he was telling them what we told them to tell them. So there's ways we could check that out. And over time, they just earned our trust. And then the greatest trust of all, under fire, enemy fire. And literally never had to worry about my back once. They covered it, tried to cover theirs. And so we were fortunate with that team. Other men had some issues, but most of our spike teams, the vetting was very thorough. So that when it came to crunch time, when you're fighting the communist North Vietnamese army coming at you in wave attacks, you don't have time to worry about that. And luckily, most of our teams were fortunate that way. No, sadly, to the best of my knowledge, all of our Vietnamese team members have passed away. The last was Hep, who passed away July 8th, 2018. He lived in Houston. He was the only member of our team to actually get out of the country. On the day that Saigon fell, he was able to get to the airport with his wife and children, and there was a C-130 leaving, and the ramp was half up. He came behind the ramp, threw his first child in. Somebody caught the first child, threw the second one in, pushed his wife up over the ramp, and the airplane began to move, and he fell down. People ran over him. Hep got up and ran alongside the airplane, and an arm reached out and grabbed him and pulled him into the C-130. And that's the way he escaped. 25 years later, the History Channel did a story on SOG. And in it, I was interviewed and I had a photograph of our team. That's the picture from across the fence. And Hep's nephew saw the picture, called the History Channel, called me. Hep's nephew lived 9 miles away in Carlsbad, California. At the time, I was living in Oceanside. So I called Hep. Hep came out for a wedding. I surprised him at the airport, and he came down for dinner a couple of days later, and we reconnected. Of course, it was a great moment in time. He met my family. They met the interpreter. He was still a smartass after all those years.
Well, so are you.
Well, yeah. Hep trained me. Well, in the beginning, Spider Parks was my 1-0. He's a roommate. Don Wolken was so all of us were together right there. And I'm just as green as grass. So I just look to them every day of almost everything. And then we met other senior NCOs who were still running missions. Sergeant First Class John McGovern, Sergeant at the time he was Staff Sergeant Pat Watkins. And these were all experienced men that had been on the ground. And that's the way we learned more. And then when other teams would come back, the clubhouse is where we'd talk about their mission. After our mission, we would talk about it. And so like when George's team and Spike Team Oregon went in to look for our team, we wanted to hear what had happened so we could get any lessons learned from their experiences. And then over time, the Frenchman, Doug Letourneau, and then Lynn Black and I were on Idaho for both of my tours of duty. And friendships that we still have today. Sadly, we lost Doug in 2019, but Lynn Black's still out there and the trolls still running around. We talk to these guys in the Spider Parks. He's down in the Huntsville, Alabama area. So we still stay connected from time to time. Well, again, it's different for us because we were in SOG, and then we have our own association that was formed 45 years ago by fellow recon men. And so we have a reunion every year, except for 2 years ago with the COVID. And so our guys have set up the networks, and we try to reach out. And now with social media, that's improved. We've had some special, in fact, the last reunion, we honored all of the men that we were able to find who were Green Berets that were killed in action and still remain missing in action. So to this day, there's 1,584 missing in action, Americans in Southeast Asia from the Vietnam War. Out of that are 50 Green Berets. When I came home the first time, at that time I had a girlfriend in Georgia. So I went home to her first, came to Trenton, introduced her to my family, and they had a nice sign up that said, "Welcome home," from the neighbors and family. And so for me, it was, my family was there, as they always were. And we heard about the other things, other people with other issues, but in my case, I came home, and then my girlfriend went back, and I had to go up to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, for my new assignment. And so the first time back, it is stunning, because when you leave on the plane, a lot of guys are cheering or clapping. I was sitting there really deeply wounded because I was leaving behind the team. And it's like, I'm going home, and the guys that kept me alive they're still fighting. Now, fortunately, Lynn Black took over the team. So I knew that they would have Lynn as the 1-0, perfect. The guy was the classic Green Beret, better than anything I ever did. And I knew I was turning it over to a good man. And he picked up the Frenchman, Doug Letourneau, for his 1-1. So I knew that they were in the hands of great Americans. So when I came back 5 months later, Doug had just returned home. We missed each other. He came home, I went back, I got on the team, and that was really a great time. I came back, I walked down, they were just coming back from the range. And they saw me, and they're going like, oh no, buku dinky dow, which means you're very crazy, right? And they, there's the mutual insults, everything from my sexuality down to drinking too much and being dinky dow. And Lynn goes, hey, you're on the team? I go, yeah, you're the 1-0, I'm with you. Because you've been here for 5 months, and I'm your assistant team member. And he goes, cool. So then we ran a few missions. He says, hey, why don't you be the 1-0 for this mission? I go, okay. So we took turns. Then finally said, we got too much experience. Lynn, you're off the team. So he left, and I got a new 1-1, John Engels, who came on, and he was outstanding. And we trained him up real quick and ran missions until I went home in April of 1970. Again, I came back. For me, it wasn't that bad. I landed at Fort Lewis, processed out. I went to Denver, where my sister was living at the time. Went skiing with her. So, like 4 days before that, I'd been in Vietnam.
Crazy.
And then I'm skiing in Denver with my sister. And then she had a rental unit, a car rental, that had to be turned back to New York City. So I took it home, drove home, saw my cousin up in Iowa, took the car home, and then we had a church softball team, so I signed up with the church softball team like the old days, and all my buddies were still there, and went back to school. My dad got me a job driving school buses, just some junk change, and one of the first bus loads I had a bus load of young black children. This was segregation. They were integrating a school in the Italian part of town. We went into that little part of Trenton, New Jersey, and got stoned and rocked. And I'm there without my car 15. And it was like, this is startling. And I just couldn't believe that this would happen in Trenton, in America. But anyways, we got the kids there. Nobody got hurt. It had some broken windows and stuff. And then went back to school. Because it took me 2 years to flunk out. So after flunking out, I was back. I had to make up my classes, and then finally graduated, got involved with the school paper a little bit. And then we had the POW MIA Concern Center at Trenton State College, where we sold thousands of bracelets, put out all the POW MIA bumper stickers, tried to raise the concern in that area at the time. So that's like one of our things I was really proud of working with at the time on campus. Yeah, well, today with how embarrassing the media has become, I no longer tell people where I used to work.
That's fine.
I went through school, got jobs at newspapers. I worked there until 2018 at different newspapers across the country. Good papers, good people I worked with. But I got laid off at my last job in Oceanside. This is November 18th, 2008. Got a job helping veterans get affordable housing. Worked at a nonprofit, Interfaith Community Services. And in 1999, my wife at the time said, "You got to write these stories for our children." At that time, we had 4 teenagers in the house and a newborn. And so I started writing a book. And with her support, without Anna's support, the book would still be like rattling around in my head. But she was behind me. We got the first one out. It came out around 2002 or 2003. Second one came out in 2007. I co-authored that with John Peters, who was a fellow recon man from FOB1, a better writer and just an amazing guy. And then we did a third book, SOG Chronicles, that came out right before President Trump awarded the Medal of Honor to Gary Michael Rose, a Green Beret from Operation Tailwind, where they were on the ground for 4 days in Laos, and Mike treated over 60 of the team members, kept them alive, passed them all up during that 4-day mission. And he himself had been seriously wounded. And even on their extraction, when they're leaving, the last helicopter with the last extraction, the Marine door gunner got shot in the neck. And as they're leaving, Mike saved this guy's life. And the way he did it, the Marine was panicking. He's a young kid, door gunner. He says, "Look, kid, you would have been dead long ago. You're not going to die. Let me patch you up." And the kid calmed down. He kept him alive, and he came home to lead a life. But Mike Rose earned his Medal of Honor. So that book is SOG Chronicles Volume 1. We hope to begin working on Volume 2 sometime in 2022. And meanwhile, we're doing the podcast with Jocko. And we're doing what Jocko calls SOGcast, where I'm now interviewing SOG recon men, or men that participated in the war, including our aviators. And we've had one historian who came on who worked with Colonel Aaron Bank, the father of the Green Berets. He's worked with Jack Singlab, who is 100 years old today. And he's one of our living legends. He was in the OSS, Korean Spec Ops, and then of course he was the chief SOG for 2 years in the Secret War, and then went on to serve our country years afterward as a general, then helping to fight communism in Central and South America. Yes, he is. He's a proud member of Franklin, Tennessee's population, and his wife is a native Franklintonian. What did you say? A native Franklin member?
Yeah, that sounds
But
good.
Joan is a native of Franklin. There were times when it was close, and I wondered if we were going to get out or not. But I never had that thought, like say, "Oh shit, I'm going to die now." Only because of the team. In our case, our team was always in contact. We never had, my time on the ground, we had some of our guys wounded by shrapnel, from hand grenades or from shrapnel from gun. Who knows where the shrapnel came from. But we didn't have any KIAs. And we had men that were wounded, and we went back and we'd patch them up. So there was never a moment where like some of our teams would get overrun, where the team is actually overrun. Every time they attacked us in a wave attack, we had our claymores or our bullets, and we would blow them back into the jungle. And so no, I didn't have that thought. Well, amen. Without them, I'm not here today. And without the Vietnamese helicopter pilot and our aviators, fearless, all of them. And that's the best Air Force in the world, it still is. But they all came. When we were in contact across the fence in Laos and on the ground in contact with the enemy, we could declare a prayer fire emergency. At that point, anything in the air would be directed to our station to provide cover for us and support until we got out. And there are times when the support was so close. In fact, on that October 7th mission, one time, as we were getting to the helicopters, we were so close that the helicopter made a gun run. And shell casings from the M60 came and landed in my collar. So my first reaction was, "Oh shit, it's burning my neck." But the second thought, wait a minute, these guys are saving my ass. Thank you. This is fun pain, I'll take it. But without the team, it's not me, it's just a team effort. And my little people were just absolutely fearless. Well, first of all, we live in America. It's the best country in the world. And that's why everybody else in the world wants to be here. It breaks my heart to see some of the derision that's directed at our country today, but we won't get into that. But the message is our country is still the best anywhere, and to support it, to love it, and to help it grow and make it better. Because that's been part of our history is, yes, we've had issues, but it's still the best, and through the years we've addressed those issues and made improvements in our country where it's still the best in the world. And anybody's not sure, go visit any other country. Then you come back and you just kiss terra firma here in the US of A and never quit. Other than my wife for supporting me, of course, through all these years, this last 28 years, and then the team members. You know, we always carry that with us, and we think about the MIAs. It's just very painful. No, no desire to go back. If I went back, I'd want to see the team. They're gone, and where we worked was Laos and Cambodia. if I could go back, only way I'd go back would be if we could help, like with Cliff Newman is one of our vets who was in the first SOG combat halo jump. Halo means he jumped from 20,000 feet with oxygen, and he went into Laos. He's been back 3 times on one mission where he had gone on a bright light to help a team to recover the remains of a team. There had been a helicopter crash with 4 crew members and 2 Green Berets that died. Sammy Hernandez had been on the rope. He had fallen off the rope, and he survived to this day. But Cliff went back. So that would be about the only thing I would go back for.
Okay.
And it's expensive.
And right now you might
I'm just
have,
a writer. Sound man, you're doing a good job keeping my phone on silent.
Your answer is-
Thanks, Dan. Y'all come back now here.